Welcome to the WP-Tonic WordPress and Tech podcast. It's episode 668, and we've got a special guest today, which is Sharon Yates from the Creative Mouse Studio. So welcome, Sharon Yates. And we have got almost a full house with Heather Wild, Stephanie Hudson, Sally Getch, Spencer Foreman, and Jonathan Denwood. Please introduce yourself. Jonathan first, I think.
Oh, thanks, Andrew. I'm the founder of WP-Tonic. We build websites and host them for e-learning entrepreneurs, education, colleges, or anybody that wants to educate online. Back over to you, Andrew.
Perfect. Sharon Yates, I've not met you before, and I'm sure a lot of people in our community haven't either. So introduce yourself and welcome to WP-Tonic podcast.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Sharon Yates. I am Texan in Galveston, and I run a studio called Creative Mouse Studio, which I specialize in WordPress and WooCommerce websites.
Perfect. Spencer Foreman, tell us about yourself.
It's Spence from WPLaunchify.com. And
Brilliant.
I was
Stephanie
saying earlier,
Hudson.
I know Sharon a long time. She's going to be a great guest on our show.
All right, is that part of your introduction? You're ruining me now. Stephanie Hudson, tell us about yourself.
And I better be quick. He's tough today. I'm Stephanie Hudson. I am the co-founder of Focus WP, where we help agencies and freelancers to scale their businesses with our white label outsource services. And come hang out with us in our Facebook group, Focus on Your Biz.
Brilliant. And Heather Wild-Renz, we haven't seen you for a while, have we? I can't remember. You've been on a cruise. You're looking a little bit tanned.
Yeah, I am Heather Wild-Renz. I am from the CTO of The Difference Consulting. And yes, I am just back from Mexico.
Perfect. And Sally Getch rhymes with sketch, the last guest to introduce themselves, and then I can get into the content today.
I'm Sally Getch, WP Fangirl, organizer of the East Bay WordPress Meetup.
Perfect. What a lovely we have here. Now, I've lost my way here, so I just need to, I'm going to start off with what I want to start off with, which I think is important. It's WordPress.
You need to.
Oh, no, I need to do something else. Okay, shush. And thanks for the guest introducing ourselves, and I've got time to catch up on myself. On to our sponsor, Castos. And we're back from that sponsor announcement. We've got a few other sponsors on there, but specifically Castos have supported this podcast for a long time, and they've got special offers. And if you want to go and see them, they're at wp-tonic.com/recommendations, where you can see all of the other sponsors as well. Right, I want to go onto this one first because I think it's important. It's the implications of WordPress joining the block protocol. Now, if anyone doesn't really understand this, I think Spencer Foreman is going to start this one off for me. Tell us what they mean by this.
Well, in a nutshell, this is another example of how words are used in multiple ways. So block protocol is not just talking about Gutenberg blocks. It's basically a protocol that would apply to allow, theoretically, data to be shared across multiple platforms that are using this transportation vehicle. In my view, while this sounds really sexy on first glance, it reminds me back to the days of 2006 when the world was promised that OpenAuth would be the way that everybody would log in to everybody's site and share data between the social media platforms that existed at the time. You know, the baby Facebook with the big Google and the soon-to-be YouTube. But then the reality clocked in, and we realized that each of the individual walled garden companies had no interest in actually sharing data across their platforms in such a way, and it became a very one-way street. So while I absolutely am in favor of block protocol in the WordPress ecosystem, I feel like using that in this global way, or what it really means here, is a bit of a fairy tale, at least for the time being, and that likely the world will pass by this whole web interface thing into some other method of sharing data that makes this, obsolete anyway, because we'll all be sharing headless this or meta that, or, virtual reality something.
All right. Sharon, you're a web developer as well, a web designer. I mean, how are you getting on with Gutenberg? Do you love it, load it? Is it Marmite? What do you think?
I don't even touch Gutenberg. I have once in a while, but I don't touch it very much because I am a big Elementor user, So, but the block protocol I'm very familiar with. I used to, when I was in a corporate world, this is what we did. We reused a lot of elements all the time, and that was the way that we tried to get our developers to work so that they weren't wasting time.
I get it. So what I think this is all about Matt saying Gutenberg is bigger than WordPress. And Heather, you're part of the difference, right? So you know, there's things that are going on there, you're WordPress people, but do you use other platforms where you think the Gutenberg blocks or the block protocol might be appropriate, like in Notion or in any kind of like ClickUp or even Squarespace?
So, some of our clients, I mean, because we develop sites like kind of based on what the clients will need and like with the eye towards eventually handing off eventually for what they will need to handle themselves. So some sites will develop in Squarespace for them because they have like little to no technical ability at all. We also use Duda for a few of them, and like that's where I see this coming into play most of all, because like Duda is like can like you can use a lot of the development front end. It's like it's AWS based. It allows you to use. I mean, they have a Flex builder, and I mean you can put React blocks in there. You can move things right from Figma into it, which is a lot easier when you have like a Figma design and try to move it over to WordPress.
Yeah, for sure.
So, so I mean, if WordPress got to the way of like being able to just like import from Figma, which is where I'm seeing this, like if Matt gets to like take blocks from Figma, put into WordPress, that would be the dream.
Or take blocks from anywhere and put it into WordPress. Or
don't you think that this all
take WordPress from anywhere to anywhere?
Isn't this a problem though of like the Gutenberg blocks in themselves all being done within this very small mind circle of WordPress versus can we all just agree to use a framework like Figma, Duda, whatever? Like in the past, we were talking about using Bootstrap. If we could all just agree on something, then everybody could make components that could actually be transportable. But the problem is always in the details, right? Like Gutenberg is still a shit show when it comes to even figuring out what's the standard, let alone talking to other people's stuff and importing.
Yeah, I mean,
frustrating.
Every time I talk to my developers, like they hand me like a beautiful Figma design, or they hand me something in Illustrator, and then they hand me something, and no matter what it is, no matter what I have to build it in, whether it's Squarespace or Duda or WordPress or whatever, I'm just gonna have to eyeball it. Like, I'm sorry.
Make it out of blocks. Make it out of CSS with blocks.
Well, I agree with Spencer that there's, Gutenberg's not even where it would be. I mean, just like I was saying in my previous career, we developed, but we were using Bootstrap to develop, reusable code so that our team could always, use, move stuff where we needed to move it. So, Gutenberg is not even close to that. So.
No, I'm gonna leave the last word on this one to Sally, because you love Gutenberg. And how much would you love if a client comes to you and say, look, I've got a Squarespace site and God forbid a Wix site or a Duda site.
Good luck
but
with
I want this block in there and it's only in Gutenberg. How do you feel about that? Because that's what this is about. It's basically making Gutenberg transportable.
I think it would be wonderful if it was transportable. I wish it was transportable to Joomla right now, because I have there's a site that I'm involved with that unfortunately is stuck on Joomla, and it gets more frustrating as it goes on.
You have a time machine?
Yeah, practically. But I think the idea is wonderful. The author of the article rightly points out that commercial enterprises like Notion and Medium would really not have any incentive. They know that they want their stuff to be proprietary. They don't want people to be able to take it elsewhere. I think it would be great to be able to do that. And Heather, I know somebody who's got a Figma to Gutenberg tool of some kind. It's still kind of experimental, but I'll hook you up.
Perfect. Right, I'm going to move on with this one, but we're going to stay with WordPress because And this is very appropriate for Stephanie because she runs Focus WP, which is a maintenance company or a care plan company for agencies. And Clarity Ad Blocker was on the WP Tavern, and they were talking about the fact that plugins and themes just drive us mad with notifications. Are you driven mad by it, Stephanie? Would a plugin like Clarity that blocks those notifications help you, or keep your temper, or keep your developers' temper?
I hate a cluttered admin. I hate it. But like a lot of that stuff you kind of have to see, or like the point mentioned in the article, I mean, it's just kind of a jerk move to do, it's like you're going to use freemium stuff, you're going to use free products. That's how you pay for it, is by getting served ads. And that's just kind of a jerk move, I think, to put something in there and block them. It could have some use for clients' sites because clients freak out when they see everything. But the way I view it is that's part of our care plan duties, is to go in there and clean all that stuff out. And it takes about 10 seconds. So.
Gotcha. What I don't like the most is the when you've got Jetpack on a site and it tells you your site health, and clients panic about that. Mm-hmm. Sharon, how do you feel about these ads coming up? You're a developer, you have to access websites all the time, and these plugin developers are just going, buy me now, do you like me, give me a review, tell everybody about me, love me. What do you think?
Sort of like my cat, but not as cute.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Stephanie too. I mean, if you're going to be using free items, that's the way they get, their advertising. But as a developer, yes, it does bother me a lot, especially if, everything is popping up all of a sudden. So I do look for something that tries to hide that, because it does irritate me, especially when I've got to close them down every time just to get my space back.
Yeah, but it's not just free plugins that do it. There are some premium plugins that bug you all the time. Jonathan, how do you feel about this? And I've got a friend of mine in the business, Jonathan Bodsinger, used to be a developer on Elegant Marketplace when I ran that, and helped me build a few plugins as well. And he's already got one out there, which is WP Notify, and it's a project on GitHub. He's got it on the WordPress GitHub or whatever it is, and there was no controversy when he was developing it, but now this one, Clarity, has got a little bit of controversy around it. Maybe it's because it's been recognized by WP Tavern.
Yeah, I think we touched on this last week on Spencer, and it's just a consequence of something larger. It's a consequence of what Spencer said last week, that the reality is people make money from WordPress through plugins, and when you're supposed to produce this plugin for free and then support it forever, it's just nonsense. It just doesn't work out. So people then want they want to get it into the directory, because that's how you publicize your plugin. And then you need to monetize it, because you got to make money. You got to pay your mortgage, your children's education, all the other things. So
because God forbid you just make a good enough product that people would want to buy the pro version because it has features that they need.
Well, I see. Yeah, but
no, I'm going to override everyone here. I'm the host. I'm going to take this one. I don't think that's the case at all. The WordPress mentality, developer mentality, is trial by fire and trial by free, right? And if it's free forever, we've got lifetime deals out there and everything. And I agree that you need to monetize these things. Being a product developer and a product owner, of course, I agree that you need to monetize these things. But you also need to have a very subtle, or a more subtle way of saying, please buy me, right? So if you have a function that is required for the pro version, keep that function in there, let it be clickable, and say, well, actually, you need the pro version for this upgrade. Don't put it in the dashboard. There's so many different ways that we as product developers can not hassle our people. And on that note, I'm going to move on, because this is the tech part. I had the last word there. It's great.
You've been having a lot of the conversation.
That's brilliant. I love being the host on this, because I'm taking over. I'm going to ask Heather's view on this, because being the former CTO of Evernote and people being rewarded for getting lots of customers and increasing stock value, even if it's not IPO'd, Apple investors are urged to vote against Tim Cook's $100 million payday. What do you reckon?
So this is always a difficult thing, because you see that when you see these high numbers, you're always like, oh my God, like how crazy is that? Because people, I mean, most people will never see $100 million or even $1 million in their life. So when you're thinking in terms of how much value Tim Cook has brought to Apple, it's just chump change. So, I mean, from a board perspective, from a company perspective, you have to think, is he worth that? And I mean, he's made Apple one of the first $1 trillion companies since the Rockefellers and the Carnegies and like those industrialists. So, I mean, I think absolutely he is worth that money.
That was Tim Cook.
No, I mean, think about it. Like, I mean, even more than Steve Jobs, because Steve Jobs was volatile. Steve Jobs brought Apple bankrupt twice.
Yeah.
Tim Cook
had to be rescued by Microsoft, for goodness sake.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't until Steve Jobs like got behind Pixar and like did that. And I mean, like he actually like brought another company bankrupt with the whole Next thing. Like before he failed so many times before he actually got a good, but Tim Cook has just steered that ship so strongly to become the new robber baron. And I think he deserves to be paid for that.
Okay, so I'm going to ask for volunteers here. Who doesn't agree that he should be paid $100 million a year?
I don't have an opinion because I don't know what Heather knows. So you can. I'm
going to go to Spencer
me out.
Why don't you agree, Spencer? You're a capitalist and an entrepreneur.
I 100% have full faith in Heather's logic and her experience in this regard, but I'm going to use the metaphor of a baseball team, okay? Or let's use the Chicago Bulls when Michael Jordan was on it, okay? There's those who can argue that the collaboration of the 5 players, including Michael Jordan, you don't have to be a basketball person to know what I'm talking about. They won 5 championships, was the reason. Or it could have been the coach, or it could have been the owner. But the problem in what I think Heather is saying, in my view of it, is that Tim Cook didn't do this by himself. Yes, he was on the bridge like a big captain of a ship, or like, you know, the coach of the Bulls, or like the owner, whoever you want to pick. But the players made the plays, and the audience and the energy. There was a collaboration of lots of individuals. And here the problem I see is that within a certain reasonable range, if everybody's happy in the workforce, you can pay the guy $1 trillion. Who cares? But they clearly have some real big problems at the worker level that are being ignored. At the same time, you're publicly giving this guy $100 million. And I think that's where I feel that the problem lies. You have like an Enron scenario. You have a political problem where you can't reward one person, even if he's the CEO, while the other people are clearly suffering, because that's just blind to the reality of what's going on. And shareholder value over everything else is one of the problems that we struggle with using the term robber barons. And it's something that corrected back at the turn of the century with the Carnegies and the rest of the ones, the Rockefellers. They came in and corrected the situation because those individuals were getting rewarded and had a monopolistic position. And we talk on the show all the time about Bezos and so forth. So like sticking, you know, your fingers out like this to all the workers while giving the CEO $100 million does not acknowledge the reality. Even though it is true, I agree that Heather is correct. He's done an outstanding job of navigating in a world where other companies have failed, but he's not literally doing it by himself.
Sharon Yates, you're a normal person. You've got a normal business. I'm going to let Stephanie in a second. Yeah, how do you feel about this guy getting $100 million for leading a company to 400% growth since he's been there?
Well, I'd like a part of that, but But like Spencer says, there is a team behind that. It's just he is leading, and hopefully he is doing a great job at that, like Heather says. So he's probably earned his worth. But I would also hope that along with what he's getting paid, that the team that is under him is also getting paid as well.
And they are proportionally.
Yeah, well, maybe that's an issue. They need to announce that as well.
Can I say something?
You are. I was just about to let you in, so just sit back, relax. I'm the host. You always seem to forget this. Right, now, Jonathan Denwood, what's your opinion on this piece?
Well, I think it's linked to hubris. I think it's linked to the business community being over believing their own storyline. When you're talking about sports people or celebrities, entertainers, their career, they can reach the heights, and then suddenly their career, they can get an injury. They can be out of vogue with Hollywood, and their career effectively can be ended. So it's a high risk, high reward occupation to be a sports individual or to be involved in entertainment. It's just go. When it comes to business, we have, as a society, not only in America, but in other parts of the world, have put these business individuals on a pedestal, which is unrealistic. And like what Spencer said, they are effective managers. They are not unique sports individuals or unique entertainers. If they feel they are, it's hubris. They are effective managers. They're not even entrepreneurs. I classify myself as an entrepreneur. It's a different mindset than running an enormous company like Apple.
Which again has its own responsibilities and its own risk.
We see all the time
that CEOs are just cut off at the ankles. They're saying, right, your returns this quarter. You made us lose. I don't know what's happening with the Zoom guys, but I'm sure that there's a CEO or chief operating officer that's getting a bit of a telling off from last week. So I'm going to move on to Stephanie's got something to say on this. You're not really money motivated to that degree, but how would you feel about 100 million a year pay?
It's like the numbers are all pretend at this point. Like they're so big that it's just nuts. Like it almost doesn't even mean anything. But I agree with some of the comments here that it's the most valuable company in the world. Like if any CEO should be getting $100 million bonus or whatever that it is, like it should be him. It's the most valuable company on the planet, but also that it should trickle down. And you shouldn't have issues with workers that can't get enough sick time or that can't, afford to buy their own home or things like that. When you get underneath somebody, then that's where it becomes so disproportionate that it's just, that's where it starts to feel wrong. The number itself isn't really the issue. It's how they're treating their people. Do any of you guys follow Dan Price on Twitter?
Yeah.
He's so good. He's the guy who,
the Gravity guy, right?
The Gravity payments guy, yeah. And he did he has like his minimum wage for all his employees is $70,000 a year, and people thought like you're gonna go bust, blah blah blah, and his company like tripled, and he's got tons of like staff loyalty and all this stuff. But his Twitter thread talks a lot about like how there's a lot of businesses talking about like inflation, but it's really just corporate greed, and like they're raising prices, and if that starts to affect the consumers and the other employees, where it's like, oh well, your iPhones are now going to cost $2,000 instead of $1,000 because all these parts are so hard to get, and PS we're also going to give him $100 million. Like that's where it starts to get like unbalanced. But I mean, their phones are insanely expensive, but they haven't really increased in price dramatically over this same period of time either. So it's like, as long as the proportions are in place, then who cares? Like, what's he gonna do with 150? Like, it's just so much money. It's just like insane.
The only thing I don't like about their pricing policy is that it's if it's $600 in the US, it's £600 in the UK.
Yes, I know.
And so it
tricky.
makes an iMac is really expensive in this country. It's
Yeah.
$2,500.
Well, it's really expensive here. It's even more expensive there.
$2,500 or £2,500 entry fee.
You're paying for
an
the
entry
keyboard.
level iMac. Pardon me?
You're paying for the different keyboard. You want your keyboard to have the pound sign on it.
Right, I've got the mute key here. You can stop straight away. Blimey. Right now, I think it's about time for a
I
little
literally
break.
never
Jonathan.
thought about that doesn't have the
Oh, well, I
control key
lived in
symbol on
Britain
the
for 2
keyboard.
years. The keyboard is different, and it takes a little time to get used
It's so annoying. When I went to school in England, it was just like, oh no, where's all my right?
Oh, I didn't know you went to school in England. There you go. Oh, right, there we are. That's why she laughs at.
We're just going to have an interview with Heather. Her history
I
is
know.
very interesting.
Oh, we have to have her on. Yeah. Go on, sorry.
Am I allowed to go to this break or not? What's going on?
Yeah,
Right.
of course you are.
So we're going to go for a little break. Thank you very much for listening. And welcome back to the WP-Tonic podcast show, which is WordPress in Tech on a Friday morning or Friday afternoon in the UK for me. And the basic conversation has been around Apple and technology and WordPress and all kinds of things like that. But what are we doing about listening to podcasts ourselves? Who listens to Spotify? We'll have a show of hands and a vocal show of hands as well for our listeners. Because Spotify is acquiring 2 major podcast tech platforms. And they've made a couple of faux pas, really, on a couple of podcast platforms that they've had in the past. And we've just had news today that one big podcast person is leaving Spotify. She's had enough. What do you reckon to Spotify acquiring podcast tech platforms? What's that all about? Sharon Yates, do you listen to podcasts or just appear on them?
I do listen. I have several that I like to listen to. What do I think about this little situation? Well, I say, that what makes them better is awesome. They purchased a lot of other apps as well to help create their platform a little better. So, if this is going to help them a little more, I'm all for it. Although I'm not a huge fan of having to buy premium just to not get commercials. I'm not a huge fan of that, but that's the way Spotify works. So you got to deal with it if you don't want to pay.
You do. Now, Heather, you listen to a lot of podcasts because you travel the world and you sometimes can't use your computer. You'd like to keep up with podcasts. Do you listen to Spotify? Are you a pro subscriber or a free listener?
Free listener.
God, so cheap. You're so cheap. Outrageous.
Well, so my husband listens to more podcasts than I do. I'm a reader. I don't like audio, in general. So I read books, and I generally don't listen to podcasts.
Oh, I thought
Podcasts are for all those times you have to do something.
I thought we'd had a chat about listening to podcasts. Sally, you listen to podcasts, don't you?
I listen to podcasts when I drive, when I cook, when I do housework, when I do things where I can't be reading, basically, because I am a fiction junkie. And video I mostly don't like. So I listen to a lot of podcasts. I think the acquisitions will be good for Spotify. They'll probably be good for the companies that got acquired. They both have to do with metrics surrounding ads. And advertising is, a thing that podcasts use to make some money. Although in the case of most independent podcasters, what they make from their ads and sponsors is basically enough to pay the hosting fees. And anybody, I've been around the podcasting world since 2005, and every few years there's this notion that gets out there that start a podcast, get rich quick, and that is so far from the truth. But I don't listen to Spotify at all. I can't imagine that I will start doing so.
So even if these platforms are helping sharing podcasts out there, Jonathan, you've had this podcast for a while. So would you be happy for your podcast to be on any one of these platforms that they've produced? And Spotify, are you happy to be on Spotify as a WP-Tonic podcast?
Well, yes. The only
controversial people.
Well, I'm pretty in the WordPress space. I'm pretty controversial myself, so there's certain people in the WordPress that won't even talk to me. But that's their problem, isn't it? I'm not. It doesn't stop me from sleeping. Put it that way. Well, the only concern is, obviously the technology behind podcasting is the RSS feed. It's open protocol. There's been some concerns that some of these platforms have been, like all open protocols, they've been adapting it, because it's a bit linked to our first story about, and also Spencer's observations. Open protocols always sound fantastic. The benefits are there. But when it comes to the business side of it, businesses want to make their services and products sticky. They want to make sure that people don't leave. So what some of these platforms, I don't think Spotify has been one of them, but a couple others, they've been modifying the RSS feed, and they've been making it difficult. There's been consequences of that. So that's a slight concern. The good news, obviously Castos sponsors. The good news panel is Castos has agreed to be the major sponsor of the show for another year.
Brilliant.
Craig is a great CEO, and I actually think what he's done with Castos in the WordPress space is very unique and interesting, what he's done. So
you should get $100 million bonus.
He's a great guy. No, I'm not saying it but I actually believe in Castos and what they've been trying to build. But that is the only concern about all this is, some platforms have been trying to turn a open source, open protocol
into gated content.
Yes.
Really. Yeah. So Spencer, you've got very strong views on gated content, either positive or negative. What do you reckon about these acquisitions, and how will it affect the way people listen to Spotify, to podcasts, and generally getting their word out there like we try and do every week to at least one person?
I mean, it's really simple to understand. First of all, the content on Spotify is mostly available elsewhere anyway for free. I mean, all Joe Rogan stuff is out there. Howard Stern on satellite radio is not available for free and is easy away. You can find it, but you have to dig around for it. So, for example, the content isn't the issue. The interface is just an interface. But the real thing underlying it, and my sister's been a professional broadcaster and TV personality her whole professional life, is you got to understand the mindset of people in terrestrial radio, because it's the same application here. They make a template. They then apply it to a jillion markets. There are 8 million different markets, but they're all basically owned by one or two companies now. Spotify is doing what really is necessary, is they're consolidating a bunch of smaller companies and interfaces, because that's how you grow. And whether you pay or not is up to you, because that essentially is like that whole thing I talked about last couple of weeks. My kids are here. We have 5 of those stations, like HBO, Disney Plus, Paramount, Hulu, whatever. And you know what? I'm fine paying for it, because basically it's like $7 to $14 each. I just pay it, and we always know there's something on somewhere. And I think that's what's happening here, is that whomever has the most content in an interface will get the most likely people to pay, recurring, even minimal subscription to listen without. The one thing that I do pay for on my iPhone is YouTube Plus. And I pay for that because the ads would otherwise put me around the bend. But as a benefit of that, I do get the music, and I get a couple other things that I can save, which, quite frankly, I use Spotify, but I pay nothing for it, because if I really need it, I'll just use it on YouTube Plus.
Yeah, I think on YouTube Plus as well, as a creator, you can monetize it. You can ask people to subscribe to your feed and live feeds and all that kind of stuff.
I mean,
yeah, it's crazy.
It's
My nephew who developed the ComLove plugin, which in its heyday had 1 million active downloads, got MS, multiple sclerosis. So he, about 15 years ago, got diagnosed with that, and obviously it's a downhill road on that. But I was watching his live feed the other day, and I didn't realize he's got over 300 subscribers that are giving him £5 a month, which is helping him, do his life. So he's paying a very, very small amount of money to YouTube to be he's making money out of it. It's basically paying for his.
I think
quite a good thing that people can monetize things like that.
I think another interesting concept was I was listening to another podcast, and they were talking about the problems Facebook is facing, but then they were saying when you look at YouTube and how they share money through creators, they have their own controversies, but it's interesting which other social media platforms or other platforms haven't shared. It's something that maybe they should look at, because I think that's one of the, when you're building a media platform, providing content, unless you've got a advertising model that shares profits to those providers, kind of doing it the more traditional way becomes very, very expensive, and you've got the risk that now I think Apple's faced that. I think Disney share price has gone up enormously because they've got this catalogue of older programming and that, but even though they tend to, with the Star Wars franchise, they're just kind of knocking out these films, and to some extent,
they won't. I mean, they paid hundreds of millions of dollars for that. They won't show a profit on that for 10 years. I mean, it doesn't matter how much money they charge, $5.99 or $7 or whatever for Disney Plus. Where Facebook have missed out is, like you say, they've missed out on the fact that they can't monetize creators. TikTok monetize creators as well. They've really stolen the march on Facebook on that. YouTube, obviously, they've been giving away money for years. Google AdSense as well. You can earn money from AdSense. So Facebook needs to do a little catch up on that. But how then, as creators of, say, a podcast, Jonathan, you've created this podcast, could you monetize it on Spotify in a very similar way? Would you take an opportunity to monetize of course you would. He's grinning like a Cheshire cat there at the fact that he could monetize it, even though you've got generous sponsors like Castus and others.
Well, they just cover.
Mind you can monetize stuff on Spotify, but it seems like most people make chump change.
Yeah. Castos and also Spencer's company, Spencer, and your support, Andrew. It's very welcome, and it does cover the expense of doing this podcasting, but it doesn't. It certainly won't pay for my pension. That's for sure.
No, because you go skiing a lot. But the thing is that you've got the opportunity for all of us as creators to try and monetize it. And I've spoken at length with Spencer and Stephanie as well, with how do we monetize our skill set and our advice and our, is it an LMS that we need? No, not really. I don't want to commit to an LMS because, all certain things, I do coaching, so I manage to get paid for that most of the time. But with things like Spotify and YouTube and all of the social medias, if they give us an opportunity as creators to earn a living, then I salute them. What I'm concerned about with Spotify is the controversies surrounding, whether rightly or wrongly, of their creators that they've paid 100 million plus for. Would that take away listeners from our own platforms if we put them onto Spotify or try to get them onto Spotify? What do you think, Sharon, as a person in the creative business and talking to customers all the time about trying to make money out of their websites, and you specialize in WooCommerce, right? I've noticed on your website you recommend WooCommerce plugins. What do you think how do you think your customers would feel about listening to a podcast that you were on, and then all of a sudden an advert came on for a controversial podcaster?
Well, I would say most of my customers probably wouldn't be listening to me. They're I mean, I'm trying to get them in a different spot, but most of my clients, they're big, they're too busy to probably listen to somebody like me, but they do listen to my advice quite a bit in using WooCommerce and building it out. But my audience, I would say, would be towards teaching people WooCommerce and educating them on how to use other products with it. So that wouldn't be really, my clients expect me to build their website and help them, but they're not wanting to really take care of it. So, it's kind of a different audience. I would have to be two different people on a podcast, and that's definitely not where I'm heading.
So Heather, I know because I've had a cocktail or two with you and your husband, and I know that your husband has got a passive income learning system. How's that going? And would that be transportable to a podcast, or is it too graphic?
So basically, I mean, he makes a lot of money by having hopped onto somebody's platform. I mean, like Spotify. I mean, Pluralsight is where developers go to learn how to be better developers. And I mean, so they're the Spotify of developers. And so if Pluralsight were to start like doing things that turned off their enterprise clients, I mean, he might, I mean, if it affected his bottom line, he would start thinking about that. But as far as like creating content on other sites, I mean, he's on Udemy, he's on other sites as well. But I mean, the cow is Pluralsight. So, I mean, no matter what the other sites are, it's the main one. So, I mean, just like Joe Rogan, just like all the main content creators, you have to deal with whatever your cash cow is bringing in.
Sure. Yeah, it is, and you have to have that mental capacity to say, you know what, I'm making some money off this, but then you've got it. It's like really having dinner with a vegan, isn't it? Sometimes when you're eating your steak and you're looking at these laser beams looking at you eating this steak. If people don't agree with the platform or the people that are on the platform, they say, well, why are you on that? You're basically endorsing these horrible people.
But I mean, as a creator, I mean, I love how there's all of these images that they put up of like where their royalty earnings are coming from. And you see that it's like, I'm making 5 cents from Napster. I'm making like 8 cents from this. I mean, and this is like, Jay-Z is like posting this stuff and he's like, I'm making this, and like Spotify, $1 million a month.
Yeah.
So like, I don't care. I'm like, I mean, so it's a big deal when somebody somebody big that you will be listening to decides to leave Spotify. But I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they come back because there's nowhere else that people are listening.
Yeah, brilliant. Spencer, you've got a few things to say. I'm going to kill it with you on this one. What do you reckon onto this? Because I know you've commented, but I just want a bit more out of you, buddy, on this one.
About the Spotify thing?
Yeah.
I mean, basically, I think it's just going to move forward in a place where the technology of podcasts, they're so ubiquitous. That's my $5 word. I mean, there's just so many tools to listen. So it really just boils down to whether you can get the content here, there, or anywhere. And I think for many of us, it'll just aggregate into whatever's simplest. I personally would love it. We've talked about this before. If there was one subscription I could pay to access all the stuff from everywhere. But that's a dream, right? Like, that's never going to happen. I also would like to know how Matthew and Heather's admission into the self-driving Tesla car thing is working out. Are you driving the car? Are you parking it?
The car is driving itself.
Like, is it parking itself? I saw his article about your...
Oh, yeah. It's, I mean, we could make that an article next week.
That'd be good.
Speaking of technology moving forward, they got the Tesla with the self-driving car beta program, and when you think about like where we're talking today, we can talk about 10 years, 15 years ago, Flash. Let's debate Adobe Flash versus Dreamweaver, right? The conversation moved on. In 5 years from now, all the cars will drive themselves and park themselves. And all this stuff about Spotify, Schmotify, it makes no difference because we'll have the neural implant that will stop working, like the other story we're not
I
going to talk
think
about.
one of my opinions, Spencer, you already had what I saw yesterday. You already have had the neuron implant.
I would love to be like a neural implant where I could just lay in my couch and like transmit my thoughts to you, Jonathan, 24/7 here on the show.
And then what happens when it suddenly starts upgrading in the middle of something critical?
I mean,
Well,
I think
actually,
that's
a nice little segue here, people, because
Well,
what happens when the technology that we're using to improve our lives and we become reliant on it becomes obsolete, either through the technology company going bust or through the technology company moving on. This is the next article there. Bionic eyes are now obsolete and unsupported. Sally, what do you reckon? You wear glasses.
So
you might
I
have
only
bionic eyes one day.
do I want bionic eyes? Well, not particularly, but it depends on whether I need them. I mean, I didn't see this article until just this morning, but it is the issue that comes up whenever I think about implanted tech. Is it going to become obsolete? Is it going to go bad in some way? Is it going to, because I mean, like you watch Star Wars, and in some ways the most unrealistic thing is that like they have the same droids for like a jillion years, and they keep working and don't become obsolescent. Like the tech never seems to upgrade. That just seems quite unnatural. And so that would be, that would be the thing that I would worry about, and where what you would probably want, in your head, if you're having things stuck in your brain, which, I'm too squeamish to wear earrings, it would be like the socket, so that whatever you were using could be easily replaced.
I get it, and but you might have heard a giggle, listeners, and it's the reason I put on my Facebook glasses. I don't think you need an implant. You just have a wearable. We've had Apple Watches who can take our heart rate. We've got wearable Facebook glasses, which I've got on at the moment, and I'm not recording.
It's such a sexy look, Edge.
You can't even believe how good I look, right? You cannot believe how good I look. Stephanie, say that again. Sorry.
I thought you were pretending that you were blind with your glasses on.
Well, no, that would just be the lowest of the low. Not even I'm that low, but I'm going to have a real opportunity soon to check out those Facebook glasses. So I'm looking forward to that. And Stephanie, have you got any wearable tech that you wear that may go obsolete on you?
I don't have anything implanted in me at the moment, no. But this article is crazy because, like, for those listening, if you didn't read it, there was a woman who had this implanted, this retina implant to help her see. Now, they can't just see regular, like, if they were sighted, but it's giving them freedom of movement and things. And the woman was in the subway, like, about to change trains, and her thing beeped and just shut off. Like, her vision just shut off. And there's nothing she can do about it. Like, I mean, it's just ridiculous. But the tech is, I think it's rudimentary for where it will get to, but it's still remarkable. Jonathan, I had the best idea. You know what this company needs? They need Elizabeth Holmes.
Exactly.
Because hear me out.
Can you do her accent again?
Hear me out. They need me. She made so much money and grew a company so huge with something that never even worked. Imagine all the people she could help if she got behind something that actually worked, because this company has something that is making people's lives better, and they just went bust, and people are just left with defunct implants in their bodies that, like, they can't get upgrades, they can't get them fixed, they can't, there's people that can see, in a certain way, right? This guy can see, but he knows full well the second something breaks on that implant, he's just toast. And I just think that's horrible. Ugh.
Isn't that the same as driving your Tesla car with auto drive and relying on it and reading a book, Heather, and maybe crashing into something or somebody? Is that not? Do you not have that kind of angst?
Well, I would never read a book while I'm driving the car. I mean, even if the car's driving me, like, you still have to nanny it. Like, you still have to nanny it. You have to pay attention, like it's a student driver. Sometimes, like just yesterday, it was supposed to turn right, and like it automatically like went all the way into the left lane, and we're like, why did you do that, Tesla? And like sometimes we're like, all right, well, we'll let you do what you want to do because maybe you're avoiding traffic. But I mean, it clearly had the right blinker on and then cut across 4 lanes of traffic to turn left, and we're like, I don't think you meant to do that.
Did you have
I
it?
had
Did you?
a GPS that suggested I make a U-turn on a bridge with a concrete divider.
Huh.
Oh, I was driving.
Maybe-
I was driving my 10-year-old daughter in it, and I had a Chrysler Cruiser at the time with the sat nav on, and she's a very young girl sitting in the back seat legally, and the GPS said turn left. And she went, Daddy, please don't turn left. We'll drown, because it was taken us into the Thames. It would have taken us into the river. Please don't turn left, Daddy. So it was so these things. Jonathan, do you think this technology and the
Can I say something really quick?
deprecation of
I just want to say that I think, Heather, maybe you had your car in mom mode, where it's like you have the right blinker on, and then you go, oh no, right there. Or maybe it'll just leave the blinker on for like 10 miles, like dad mode. You know what I mean? Like that's what Tesla probably did.
Yeah, but I mean, we've got with car jokes, we got whenever anybody's sitting in the front seat and they're telling me how to drive, I generally tell them, if you want to drive this car, get in the back, right? Because that's kind of normal. Jonathan, the deprecation or the bankruptcy of these companies, lovely technology companies that have helped people with disabilities, there's a lot of them. They go bust. They don't get the right investment. Is that because society doesn't care? The investment society doesn't care? They don't see the value in those investments? What do you think?
Well, I don't really know about that, but I know there's been other, when it comes to medical devices, there's been circumstances around artificial hearts and other implant technology where the company has gone into gone bust, and then the person's faced another major operation because they're going to have to put another device in or whatever. But there is it is interesting. Obviously, I'm sure these people were told that this was experimental technology. I'm sure the lawyers got them to sign their 1,000-clause contract. But it is a sad, like what Stephanie said, it's still a sad story. You would have thought maybe Tim Cook can give like the odd 10 million to keep going. If you're listening, Tim, I know it's difficult to get the wallet out, Tim, but maybe you can give them the odd 10 million, or Eon or somebody. Maybe Heather knows a couple of billionaires that can give them the odd 10 million. So I'm sorry, Heather. Some loose change. And help them out, because it is a quite sad story, isn't it?
It is really right. Moving on, because we're running out of time.
Yeah, we need to get to
It's recommendation time. So Sharon, if you don't know, we like to have some recommendations, and you probably weren't warned of it. So I'll leave it for you to. Have you got a recommendation?
I do.
You have, right. You go ahead with that recommendation, and we'll get Spencer to put it into Slack.
I do. For my DIY WooCommerce users that are looking to add on to their Elementor, I would suggest using Briefcase WP for their WooCommerce Elementor add-on.
Nice. We'll go with that. Stephanie, what have you got? You've actually got a recommendation this week. What's going on with you? You're actually.
What do you mean? Actually,
paying attention. One. Crazy.
I always have a recommendation. I am recommending, since we've been talking about podcasts and things like that, there's an app called Ratings Catcher, ratingscatcher.com, and it goes and scoops up, like for the podcast, the Divi Chat podcast that I'm on, and other things like that. People can leave reviews in their Apple podcast app. They can leave them on Spotify. They can leave them in all these different places. And if you don't go and check all of those things, you can miss them. So that scrapes them all together and puts them in one place where you can see all the lovely things people are saying about you.
Brilliant. Spencer, what you got?
I've got a thing I picked up called Music Mode for YouTube. It's a Chrome extension that, as we were speaking about this just coincidentally, A lot of times there's great video that I want to listen to, but I'm walking on my iPhone, and even though I have 5G, blah, 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 it's like I can't see the video anyway. So what this does is blocks the video, but lets you keep the audio going. And as a result, if you wanted to save it or store it or just not like stream video for no reason, lets you do it. And it has some other like side benefits, but it's a neat little gimmick to throw into your browser if you want to use YouTube for content. And by the way, like I play music for fun, and I also love to listen to myself. Like YouTube has every single song ever. So even though there's lots of other ways to get a song, I mean, just type the song, and there's 800 versions of it available, almost without exception.
If it's a Chrome extension, can you do it on your iPhone?
I think you have to use this one with Chrome, but you can do it like when you're playing on my iPhone, at least. I'm sure on Android, you can just have the Chrome browser, run it, and then when you turn off the screen, it lets the browser still play, you know, without.
I don't use Safari in any way. Heather, what you got?
So my recommendation is to come visit me when I'm in London in May for DevX UK, which is a great developer conference. It's a polyglot conference. So if you are wanting to learn React for WordPress, definitely come.
Perfect. What date? Oh, have you got the dates in the link?
Yes, it is May 11th to 13th.
Yeah.
Are you speaking?
I am. I'm speaking on how to work in the metaverse, and also how not to be a tech bro.
Well, there's a certain person that will be appearing to see you speak, so that's guaranteed. Jonathan Denwood, what you got?
Yeah, I got a book that has influenced me highly over the years. It's The Last Temptation of Christ. I'm going to make Sally laugh now. I'm going to try and pronounce the author's name, Nikos Kakakakis. Oh God, have I butchered that? Really butchered that.
Close.
But it's really a really, really interesting book.
Brilliant. Sally Getch. She's on the phone.
Yeah, she's talking to Matt.
We might have to do that. So my recommendation this week has come from 3 separate people. So I've got to do it. The first one was Stephanie Hudson a little while ago, as I was reminded of. And the second time I saw it, it's Carl Van Dusen did it. But actually Alicia was the one that allowed this to come out. And it's basically a process kit for people. So if you've got any processes in your business, it kind of just allows you to put your process into screen grabs and text and everything. It's called tango.us. And have a look at that. It's quite an interesting, and it's free.
Really handy.
It is one of those free things. And I heard about it this morning, and I have put an instruction to all my developers. This is how we now do documentation, because it's just going to be so easy, really and I love it. And Sally's off the phone now, so she can do her recommendation before
yes. In honor of Heather, I'd like to recommend a Figma plugin called Design Tokens, which lets you export your Figma designs to JSON. And with a little tinkering, apparently, you can import that as your theme JSON file for a full site editing theme. So one of the people working on it is Bill Erickson, who is well known in the WordPress world. So if you're interested in that, you can just ping him. He is at Bill Erickson on Twitter.
Yeah, please put all your Spencer. Hopefully, you're putting all these recommendations.
Spencer's working hard. He's working on. He's doing it all right. It just leaves me to say thanks, Sharon, for.
I don't have Sally's link.
For coming to the WP-Tonic podcast and bearing with us. I hope you enjoyed it. It hasn't been too controversial today, but Jonathan hasn't sworn once, which is just incredible to me.
I only have occasional episodes where
I'm going for it. And thanks to Heather, Sally, Stephanie, Spencer, and of course Jonathan for allowing me to host this. And we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.